I truly appreciate the introduction. I'm not sure I need the microphone, do I? Or can does my normal booming voice carry far enough? Yeah. Okay. If I'm destroying the camera microphone as well, let me know. In fact, this is one of the advantages I have teaching a class, because I have tremendous dynamic range, and so students become very interested as I tell them this is what's so important. Actually, the lead off right there about the pronunciation of LaTeX, LaTeX, etc. In fact, an earlier conversation we were having about it is very interesting, because it actually speaks to what LaTeX is and what it's not. It was originally conceived as a program called TeX, or TeX, depending on, again, whose pronunciation you want to believe, by Donald Knuth, the grandfather of computer science. He really is the person who developed it, motivated it, and basically carried the bulk of the load of making it a workable project for quite a few years before it in fact became a large open source community-based project, and before it morphed into something called LaTeX. Now, the morphing into what's called LaTeX, and there's still tech out there, so don't let me give you the misimpression that tech is dead, was actually a project, a PhD thesis written by Leslie Lamport, Lamport. So in terms of the pronunciation of LaTeX, you might want to say that it should be called as in Leslie Lamport Tech. And I can sort of buttress this argument even more, because one of the major open source versions of LaTeX was called T-Tex, T-E-T-E-X, after Thomas Escher from Germany, who wrote T-Tex. And so perhaps it should be LaTeX, but there's another reason it should be called LaTeX. When Donald Knuth was designing the photo typesetting tool that he was designing, which is now ultimately LaTeX that we'll be talking about, it was really about a concept that most people would ignore if they were talking about or looking into how they would do photo typesetting. It was about rubber and spaces. Essentially, all tech does is create boxes that are stretched or manipulated on the page, and later on the fonts and the necessary components are inserted in a sort of final sense into the boxes that are the right shape and size. And so the whole algorithm for typesetting a page was, how do I put the boxes on the page so that they can hold the fonts and all the other attributes they need to hold in such a way so that it's laid out so that it looks like what we have grown to accept in the West as typewritten or typeset. I shouldn't say even typewritten, typeset text. And for that reason, I think LaTeX is more appropriate, because it does evoke the image of rubber and of stretching, which is really what the program is about. That's at the guts of it. I'm sure most of you are not interested in working at that level with LaTeX. I like working with LaTeX at every level. I've done what are called style files. Actually, I've done one for Oxford University Press. I've done one for several other publishing companies. And what a style file essentially is, it's a template. And this is perhaps one of the first things you have to become aware of when you are using LaTeX, is that you get to invoke a style file that essentially builds the attributes of the document for you automatically. So that in most cases, if you use a style file like article, for example, you don't have to do much else other than to say, I'm going to use the article style, and it'll default to, I think it's 10-point type, and you can start typing, producing something, and it'll essentially work to produce a document. Not perhaps the best looking document you've ever seen in your life, but a very real typeset document that's probably every bit as good as what comes out of Microsoft Word. Incidentally, I have nothing against Microsoft Word. I think it's a little bit strange in terms of how, when you take all the time and effort to produce a nice document in it, and then you send it to your friend across the computer land, computer somewhere else, living in, I don't know, Botswana or in Canton, China, and they say, gee, this is horrible, it looks like crap. And they're using a different version of Microsoft Word, and just reformatted it differently. And even if you're running the same version, it seems like it has a wonderful ability to jiggle stuff around so that the pagination changes, paragraphs get thrown somewhere else, etc. LaTeX does not do that. Once you create a document, it's a PDF document, it is, for all intents and purposes, frozen in space and time. That's the way it's going to look for everybody. The resolution may change depending on the screen you have with the printer, but that's about the extent to which that document will look good or not look good. Just the resolution of the ultimate device you're viewing it on. So you have in LaTeX a document class or a style file that you use, but you also have a whole bunch of packages that you can use as well. So one of the things I'm going to try to talk about today, because this is going to be an overview of LaTeX, is how to sort of get involved with it if you're interested in it, but more importantly, what it is that it can do. I think the easiest way to sort of begin that process is to sort of bring up a typical LaTeX produced file. In this case, since had a nice introduction there, I thought I'd go through my CV right there and just say, well, look, I produced my CV. It's done in LaTeX. And you'll notice that my CV is, nicely paginated. Page numbers are on it. It has a certain style format for the layout of each of the attributes that I'm looking at right there. I like to have my CV so that time, reverse time is how it's done, 2012 to the present for academic experience, etc., so on and so forth. Now, industrial experience, so on and so forth as I go through the document like this. And then, of course, activities. And finally, at the very end, of course, your publications. This is what the first thing they look at. What does this guy ever write, So I'm going to talk about this as well. But before I do, if you look at this document, if you were typesetting this in Microsoft Word, or even if you were a novice to typesetting this in LaTeX, what you would typically do is you would try to type it like it looks. LaTeX does not allow you to type things like they look. You can't put space in where you want space to be easily, at least not as a novice. Essentially, most of these layouts right that are produced with a macro that produces the text so that it looks exactly the same for each such object that I've created. So for example, this one looks just like that one because this has certain properties and this has certain properties, and I invoke those properties when I type my text into the document. The attributes that you can pull can get very sophisticated. In other words, you can construct documents that have tremendous levels of difficulty and layering. I want to make you aware of that only because I don't want you to think that whatever you're playing with in terms of the LaTeX document, if you decide to go home and play with it, that's all you can do with it. You can go from, and I'm going to show you some examples, you can go to extremes in terms of what you can do with LaTeX. In particular, I've got some phenomenal examples right here that really are at the upper bounds of what can be done with any photo typesetting tool. One of the things I'd like you to sort of become aware of as we're sort of just looking at this file just as an overview is that it's right and left justified. And it's right and left justified with true proportional spacing. It's not, oh, I've got this big gap where this word is and it's going to spread the word out, etc. Now this is a difficult file to typeset because of course there's not a lot of words to fill each line, and so it's a difficult task to sort of lay out each line so that you have the maximum amount of space that you can get white space, fill in right there, so on and so forth. The thing that makes this interesting is that the layout is automatically done by the package that you're using when you call certain attributes to have certain values. However, everything that's in any package or anything else can also be manually modified. So depending on your level of expertise and the time you're willing to spend on anything, you can create a document that does anything you want it to do. Okay? Let me also go to the very end of this file because this was also an important point that I wanted to bring in right from the very beginning, my bibliography. The bibliography is an interesting thing. Typically when you write an article, you have a bibliography. Typically when you write a journal article, they expect a certain style for that publication so that the bibliography has to be done in a certain, oops, I'm not on the bibliography, done in a certain way with certain presentation, whether something is quoted or whether it's italicized, etc. In LaTeX, remember I told you, everything can be invoked through the use of packages that control the style and the layout. In this case, the bibliography can also be controlled the same way. And the nice thing about LaTeX, you don't write a bibliography, well, if you know what you're doing, you don't write it that way. You write it as a database. So you have a file called a bib file that's separate, and you create a database. Essentially, for example, in this article right here, I have the mnemonic that's associated with the naming of this article. Let's say I call this Bozo the Clown. No particular reason, Bozo the Clown. So every time I'm going to refer to that article, there's going to be an attribute that's associated with it called Bozo the Clown, and or a tag or something that if you want to call it that. And so this article will be in the database typeset in such a way so that it looks like this, but in the original database it'll have, for example, authors, article title, the publication, the volume, the journal number, the date. There's a string of about 20 or 30 of these that you can put down typically for most publications. And so you build a database that you fill these items in for, and when you go to process the file and build the bibliography or the publications list or the references list, and you say, I want it done using SciAm style, which is, SciAm is of course one of the large applied mathematics organizations. If you're submitting an article to SciAm, they'll want it in their style. And you say, okay, build this publication list in that style, not in the standard AMS style, or not in half a dozen styles that are readily available, including an APA-like style. So it gives you tremendous flexibility in terms of restructuring how your article looks by simply changing one command that says I want the style to be different. And that's true for all attributes of an article. Now, while I'm on that topic, let me also point out that you'll notice these numbers right here are not produced by me. I didn't type a little bracket 1, bracket 2, bracket 3, bracket 4, etc. I just created a bibliography. I created a list of the mnemonics that reference each of these articles, the tags, so to speak, that bring in each of these lines right here, and it's auto-numbered. So if I were to take this one out right here, the next one would be 4 down here when it would reconstruct the file. And this is true for every environment that you run in LaTeX. So if you have a list, if you have an itemized list with Roman numerals I, double I, etc., or if it's using any other sort of A, B, C, D, E, F, G numbering scheme, alphanumeric, it will automatically do that numbering for you. Now, in mathematics, this was built into the package because typically if you look at a math text or a math article, you'll often see someone saying, in equation 7, we did this, and taking equation 9 and combining it with equation 7, we get this result, and there's a little bit more math down there. And that's typical of what you probably see in a math article or in a math text if you remember back in your calculus book or something like that. That would be very difficult to do if we had to actually put a little parenthesis 7 next to the equation number, and if we decide to change our equations, we'd have to renumber all our equations in the article or the book or the paper or whatever. Guess what? It's done automatically. All the numbering is done automatically. So you say to yourself, well, how does it know that I want to talk about equation 7 and combine it with equation 9? Because you give it a name. You give it a little command that says, this is the name of this equation, that's the name of that equation, and every time you want to use that equation or refer to it, you just refer to it by name. I can call it Bozo the Clown. The Bozo the Clown equation in conjunction with the new Bozo the Clown equation, and wherever Bozo the Clown equation is seen in that document, it's going to be referred to as equation 9, so to speak. And so these things become floating values that change their value when the document is finally cast into print. And in that sense, one of the technical aspects of LaTeX that most people don't see, because they typically run it with through what's called a graphical user interface. There's some applications package that will run LaTeX for you, and it'll bring up the document for you, and you'll be able to see the document on your computer, and you'll be able to process it and output it and print it and do all sorts of things like you would with Microsoft Word. What you don't see is that behind the scenes, each time a LaTeX document is being produced, it's actually being run 3 times. The first time, it runs through the document, the program runs through the document, and produces a list of references and cross-references, because those could have changed. And then it takes those cross-reference and reference lists and produces, on the second pass, the actual values of those in the document. And on the third pass, if it's necessary, it validates whether that in fact is correct. Most of the time, 2 passes are enough. Sometimes a third pass is required, depending on what you're doing. That's all transparent to the user, but it is going on behind the scenes. Now, I'm going to take my resume off because I don't think I'm that important. I want to pick up a somewhat more interesting example right here. Let's take a look at this one. This is actually the LaTeX template that I would give to graduate students and students doing an honors thesis or master's or doctoral dissertation at USM. I maintained for the graduate school the template for the dissertation and thesis package for computational science and mathematics and physics. And this is, so you see a document with John, a student, in it. And if I go down a little bit, oops, I'll notice that one of the things in this document is an index. And that index, I'm sorry, I went to the last page, but that's a good place to actually be at. The index, just like the numbering of the bibliography, is done automatically. All I need to do to create an index is invoke the package that does indices, and next to each word I want to index, I put a little command that says index this, and what the index's name is, predictor corrector. Okay. Now, do I put that it's on page 10 and page 12? No, it automatically knows where that tag has been put when the document is typeset that it's on page 10, and therefore when it builds the index, it will of course put it on the reference to page 10. So all of this is done automatically. I mean, if you think about producing a larger comprehensive document, this is the ideal mechanism, like a thesis, this is the ideal mechanism for doing this. Now, I won't be able to show you all of the details of how to do this because this gets into the technical details, but it's actually not that difficult. And there's my bibliography. There's some computer data that I've imported into my thing. In fact, let me go right to the very beginning again and take it down from here. There's the abstract, copyright, sign-off sheet. This is all automatically generated for the document based on the template, which was called the USM dissertation style. So everything would be done automatically. You would change the name of the student in the document, but the whole page would be cast the same, regardless of who the student was or what the name was that was there. So it's like a database format that you input values into, and then the document is produced from that database format. This is the acknowledgement. I like this acknowledgement. So I'm going to take a moment right here to let everyone read this. Acknowledgement. This is to thank all of those who have assisted me in this effort. I am forever indebted to my advisor, who is the source of all wisdom in this worldly life. I am and remain in his awesome, brilliant shadow. And of course, right there I have what the lead contents. These little references that tell you where the document exists in the file space, so the student knows where to look for it if they want. Let me tell you, this was the biggest mistake I ever made. If you look in the archives at USM, half the theses and dissertations never got this page changed.
So you set it up as a joke and
they just went with it, yes. So I have left my imprint there. Table of contents. Hey, it creates it automatically. Wow, think about that. You know, your advisor says, I think this should be called not the boundary algorithm, but the boundary method. You don't have to remember in every place where this thing changes to change it. You only change it in the actual title of the section, and then it's changed everywhere in the document. So it really allows you to propagate values as you want. List of illustrations, list of tables, list of abbreviations, notation and glossary. You can even create a glossary. So, and not every student needed this for every dissertation or thesis that was done, but they could simply remove this from the document by simply not having that page be processed. And then of course chapter 1 background. This was the style that was required by the University of Southern Mississippi. The sections had to be centered. I don't like centered sections, but hey, that was the requirement imposed on me. But once again, you'll notice that it's right and left justified. And this is actually remarkable because at the University of Southern Mississippi, the requirement was that a thesis or dissertation had to be double spaced and it had to be ragged right, because without ragged right, it would be horrible looking if you tried to proportional space it. I insisted that for a math document, I wanted space and a half. Anything more than that is just too sparse. And on top of that, I want it right and left justified. And I won the day. The graduate dean agreed with me. And in 1996, that was cast in stone, and ever since then, it's been in this format. You can do tables, you can do math equations, and you know, they don't look like the ransom notes taken out of a Life magazine that are pasted on the page like you do when you do Microsoft Word. It's gotten a little bit better. Microsoft Word, I have to admit, has gotten better. The math editor has gotten a lot better, but I still think the gold standard is LaTeX in terms of mathematics. Also, mathematics is very easy to typeset. Unlike, well, you can do it depending on the graphical user interface, the program you're running to run LaTeX. You can bring down a menu that allows you to sort of bring down the Greek characters or the symbols or whatever. Or you can do it in command mode. And this gives me an opportunity to talk a little bit more about the guts of LaTeX. LaTeX is a markup language. How many of you know what a markup language is? What's a markup language? It's like HTML.
HTML, yeah.
If you write HTML, if you ever take a look at a web page, you know, take a look at the source code, you've got like bracket HTML, close bracket, you've got bracket P, close P to begin the paragraph, you've got begin itemized, end itemized, sort of with the item list, etc., item, item, item. You execute commands that then tell the web page interpreter how to actually display that page so that it looks good. So it looks like nice HTML code that you want to read. In mathematics, you can do that as well with LaTeX. In fact, you can do it for all attributes of LaTeX. You actually write the code, and it's very easy because it's mnemonic. So for example, rho, the Greek letter rho, is just \rho. The Greek letter epsilon is \epsilon. If you want to write the integral of f of x dx from a to b, it's just \int subscript a caret b f of x equals dx. And it automatically will typeset that when you go into math mode. And there's a difference. There is something called math mode in LaTeX and text mode. There are two modes essentially that LaTeX has. One is math mode and the other one is text mode. And you can do fairly sophisticated mathematics. This is not particularly sophisticated, but it gets to be actually reasonably sophisticated. You can also import images and graphics. And in this case, you'll notice I've got a graph that actually was produced by another package to produce the lines, but the actual text that I put there was actually overlaid on top of the image so that the fonts match the fonts in my document. Often, I think students make the mistake of trying to create the image in totality using some external package, and then the fonts don't match, and you get this kind of like mismatch a little bit. And it's not difficult to put the font exactly where you want, and here's the reason why. In what's called the picture environment, you can take any bit of text, once you're in the picture environment, and you can tell where, in terms of its x coordinate and y coordinate, this thing should be placed on the paper. And you can adjust it, and here's where tech is wonderful. You can adjust its position using any system of units you want. You can use centimeters if you happen to be terribly metric. You can use meters, although that's not recommended because a page is in fractions of a meter. You can use points. You can use picas. You can use, you name it, any measure of type that's out there you can use. My favorite measure is the M, EM. You know what an M is? If I want to have this thing move 12 M's to the left and 5 M's up, what's an M? It's the width of the letter M, the capital letter M, in the font that you're using. So if you change your font size, you also have changed proportionally the placement of the thing that you just wanted to place in the right position, and it still stays in the right position. So it's a relative measure, not an absolute measure. But you have an absolute measure as well. So, more math, Laval nozzle, etc. Some code that's put in there. Another pretty picture that's put in there. Again, this is not difficult to do. You can invoke a figure environment, and embedded in that is the picture environment. Let's talk about the figure environment as opposed to the picture environment. The picture environment lets you put in pictures, any format, JPEG, PNG, PDF, etc. When you put that into the figure that you want to have displayed, the picture environment tells how to position it. The figure environment layers the picture environment, and it creates this figure attribute. So you have remember, figures have captions, they have positioning, and they float. A figure has a float. It either floats to the top, to the bottom, to the center, or it has to be right here. And the caption has to be part of the table of contents. And so this environment allows you to construct this object in a way that makes the document run seamlessly to produce the final result with all the things put into the document where they need to be. And so when you're running LaTeX, what you have to do is be aware of all of these layered environments that let you do what you want to do. Now, I started saying earlier that you can't just put white space where you want in a LaTeX document. I'm lying, you can. But typically what most people do is they'll want to hit the carriage return to put more white space into their document. And in LaTeX, there's a wonderful rule in terms of typesetting plain text, which makes it very, very easy. If you have a line, or 2 lines, or 10 lines, or 10,000 lines separating one bit of text from another one, they'll be typeset as 2 paragraphs, 2 separate paragraphs. So the existence of a line is what separates paragraphs. So 1, 2, 3, 5 makes no difference. How many lines you have, it's still going to be 2 separate paragraphs. And the spacing between them will be set by the document style format, which is what the space between 2 paragraphs has to be. In this case, if we look at this document, let me just go up one place right here. We see paragraphs are indented, and whether I had 6 lines in the original document, the LaTeX file, or 1, this thing would be 1 blank line, this thing would be typeset as 1 separate paragraph. How do I typeset words? In other words, the, total, enthalpy. You notice they're separate words. I can leave a single space between 2 words. I can leave 20 spaces. It's going to make it the amount of space it needs so that it's truly proportionally spaced. You can't just add space by putting more space on your space bar on the keyboard. It's not going to give you 10 spaces. If you want space, you have to request the space as an attribute. So there's a little command that you can put in that gives you horizontal space or vertical space. And you can say, I want so much vertical space. Let's say I want between this paragraph and that paragraph, I want 1 centimeter of vertical space. If you request that, it may give you 1 centimeter, or give you the nearest thing to 1 centimeter that thinks is appropriate. Unless you say, I absolutely want 1 centimeter of space. With a fixed attribute, you star the command, in which case it says, I will give you that 1 centimeter, even though I know you don't need it. So you can change all of these attributes in LaTeX. Now, most people work with LaTeX, and they work with a meager set of fonts. The standard font is Times Roman, Times Adobe actually, that most people use. It's probably the standard one that's evolved. Originally it was Computer Modern. That was the first font set that was developed for LaTeX, Computer Modern by Donald Knuth. In fact, I think there's only about 30 or 40 partially complete type fonts available in the world for doing mathematics. And I think there's only 3 or 4 that are fully complete. So when you're writing mathematics, you only have a choice of 3 or 4 fonts. Times Adobe, Helvetica, I'm not sure Palatino has the complete set. Computer Modern is the 4th one, and Concrete, which I think still has some missing components. Now you'll say, well, why are there only 3 or 4 or 5 font sets that cover all of mathematics. Well, think about mathematics. I'm not talking about the fonts you see in your text. I'm talking about all the weird glyphs and structures and things that you see on pages like this that have to be typeset, that mathematicians typically use, that really sort of have to be cast in every possible size and range of sizes. Let me talk about that for a second. You've heard about fonts that scale, true type fonts, or well, typically when you write a document, you have two types of fonts. Raster fonts, that's how most documents used to be written, so that when you blew it up or changed the scale, they would get horribly staircased and rastery and horrible, and you really wouldn't want to print the document if it looked like that. A font that actually scales with the size of the document is a vector graphics font, regardless of the format in which it's written in. And so if I were to make this 10 times bigger or 100 times bigger, that end would just be just as smooth. But there's a problem with that. Whether you realize it or not, a font set, a complete font set, doesn't just have a simple set of rules. In fact, there are algebraic curves that define this, splines that define the shape of the curves and the fills associated with them. There's not one set of rules. There's typically a set of 3 or 4 rules for each character. And the reason is, if you look very carefully, if I make this to be a 16-point font instead of a 5-point font, the thin lines get too thin if I were to just scale the font from 5 points to 16 points. And the thick parts get too thick. And so the rules for scaling the fonts have to change over ranges. And so to build a complete font set really requires not only taking into account all the regular alphanumeric characters you're used to, but thousands upon thousands of characters associated with typing mathematics. And so for that reason, math just doesn't have a whole load of font sets out there. Having said that, if you're not typing math and you're not worried about weird constructs like this, then you're much better off. You can choose any one of several hundreds of font sets and you'll be okay. But for the mathematicians right here, it's not the case. Incidentally, there's a little bit of tech right here: begin align, overwrite arrow, psi, delta. This shows you how this thing was basically typeset right here. This is the actual sort of thing that produced the structure right there. Oh, where tech is very nice, it does accents. And it does different language as well too. So if you're not writing in English, you can also write in another language. But it does accents in English very well. Tilde T's, acute accents, etc. So all of these things can be done quite easily by using commands. I don't want to bore you with the math. I know you guys are all excited about it, but I don't want to bore you with it. Incidentally, there's a quiz after this on the math. On the math only, not on the LaTeX, only on the math. Hope you were paying attention, right? Let me get rid of this document right here and go to something that's a little bit more exciting, a little bit more sexy, if you see what I'm saying. Now, if you're writing your document in LaTeX, typically you have all this math written or all this text written, and it's written in LaTeX. Now you got to produce a PowerPoint presentation. In fact, everyone asks me, where's my PowerPoint? I don't have a, in fact, if you go to an AMS meeting, typically you'll have a Beamer presentation with PDF, not with PowerPoint. And the reason is because you can cut and paste all the commands you have in your LaTeX file, all the math you've developed, into your PDF document for your presentation and process that through LaTeX, and that produces a presentation. Now, this is one that I've produced here for UNH when I came here last year. This is a Beamer template, a standard template that I've customized. You're welcome to have this if you want to produce a PDF file for your own presentation. And this is, in fact, it's going to be about a talk I want to give this semester. And I've just pulled a couple lines from it. Volume, surfaces, and integrals is the title of the presentation. So I edited this a little bit to give you the sense that you can change that anywhere you want. You'll notice I have in my document a nice little College of Science and Technology seal. And for those of you, can you see that? You see the nice little watermark you have on the page? A little bit more sophisticated. I think you got to do it right. And you'll notice every page has that watermark on it if you're looking carefully. And every page has these attributes automatically put on it, including the topic, the title, the department of mathematics, what the seminar is, etc. And the actual contents of this file right here are just written just like you would any other file as a text file. But it's put into that position on the page exactly the way it should be because LaTeX knows how to do that. It knows the rules for photo typesetting. And so I've got, oh, and guess what? Did you see what I've just done? Just like with a, you can do things like that, change the color, change attributes, etc. So this makes for a nice presentation for math. And actually this is talking about the relationship between volume and surface area for a sphere, which is an interesting relationship. And we're looking at n spheres right here, which I'll talk about hopefully later this semester. So you can come to that talk too. I know you guys are all excited. You didn't know that you'd have an opportunity to follow up on this. A little bit of Green's theorem and Stokes' theorem. And I cut it short, and that's the end of my slide presentation. It's a very nice way of ending a talk by leaving something up there for everyone to look at. So it's really nice. Doing it is no more difficult than, once you learn how to do a PDF document with LaTeX, this is not much harder. Now, if you had to design this from scratch, you might find it difficult, but the nice thing about LaTeX is the whole community of users out there that allow you to just grab whatever's out there and just modify it and use it for your own use. So it's a phenomenal sort of community.
So the question here is, if I'm doing what's called a PowerPoint, I mean, I will use LaTeX
For your
of slides,
yeah.
but you're talking about something different.
Well, my LaTeX is used to produce the slide from my original paper. Mm-hmm. So I just cut and paste the portions of the math that I want into the talk, and then I just reprocess this through this Beamer presentation package. It's a style file essentially that puts it out in slide format with the colors and all the things that are part of the attribute of this document. So it makes for a glitzy presentation. You could do a regular document and just put it up there and just change the font to be big, and it would still work. But this makes it glossy. And in fact, that's really what I want to get to, because most people think of LaTeX and everything else associated with it in terms of, oh, it's just for math people doing mathematics. We've seen that we could do a dissertation or thesis with it. But, you know, I do everything with this. I'm one of these kind of, in fact, back when I was in graduate school, I had a fellow I shared an office with, Yugoslav. Very interesting fellow. He had an interesting take on the world. And he left me with a couple of thoughts that really I still hold in my head. One of them was the phrase, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I think I've got a hammer right here. So, having said that, let's go to this right here. I hope this is the right one. Come on. Okay, I think it is. Okay, this is my Christmas cards that I have printed off. This is actually the version that's produced for the web page, so that it's printed top to bottom as opposed to side, because those are the ones I send out and have printed up at any place that'll print color slides up cheaply enough. And this is the document of what I have in there, which is kind of nice. I mean, I pick some pictures out, put them into my document, and write my nice little Christmas card that way. So it's, yeah, you'd think, well, I don't need to do that. Maybe you don't, but I can, and I do. Let's talk about that presentation again. Because LaTeX is a document system that interfaces with quite a few packages that are out there in the open source community. Remember my little color presentation that I had on the slides earlier? This is that same presentation, only there's 9 slides to a page and it's black and white. Like if you want to hand it out for printing, it takes the same document and converts it into a black and white format that you can print economically, because you don't have to print 117 copies in color. So it's very nice to do. When I was share it in, at USM. Let's see, where is that? Here it is. This was the document, would produce a newsletter. And this is all done in LaTeX. Every single thing is done in LaTeX with one addition that you need to be aware of. You see the fancy image work? That's clearly not LaTeX. The overlays are done in LaTeX. The package I'm using right there is ImageMagick. ImageMagick is also open source, runs on any platform, Windows, Mac, etc., certainly Linux, and allows you to produce all the fancy graphics work that you do. But the placement of that graphics, the layout of the boxes, the positioning of these into, and you notice this is 2-column, this is 2-column right there. You notice it's proportionally spaced, 2-column. I could do 3-column. I've done 3-column. I can do 4-column. I can do 6-column. It's a little bit tight on 6-column, but I've done it. I think it's kind of nice. And you would fold this up, print it off, and this was where the fold was supposed to be, so you could send it out by mail. So I think it's kind of nice, as I said. Let me touch base right here. Oops. I have a difficulty with mice. Okay. Where is that? I used to be the Linux Users Group faculty advisor at USM. We used to have an Install Fest every year. I think this was the last year we had it. That's just an image set in LaTeX. I call it I say, set the environment for a picture. I make the whole background be the picture. And then the text is just positioned on that, again with LaTeX. And so you've got yourself a nice presentation board that really looks superbly glossy right there. Let's see. Oh, and more recent, since we were talking about that, the Math Zone. This is, again, done in LaTeX with the images embedded, 2-column. You'll notice there's not a lot of hyphenation either in the text right there. This one probably has a little bit more than some of the other documents I later cleaned up, but you can change all those attributes. And incidentally, these things should be, if I do it right, if I've done it right, should be hot. I don't know if this one will pick it up. Yeah.
Is this like a press release?
Yeah, it was one of the documents that was on the website, and it was one of the things that was there. Cannot diagnose problem. Internet Explorer is being silly, but it should have been able to display the page that's in the URL, so I'll just leave you to use Firefox. One last thing right here that I really want to sort of make you aware of. Okay. You ever have Avery labels printed up? I do mine in LaTeX. Does a nice job. But if you do, get the ones that punch out easily, not the ones you have to actually fold and bend, fold and bend, fold and bend with the tatty edges. A little bit more expensive, but they really do look professional. So for all those reasons right there. Let me, before I leave you, give you one quick look at something that I think is worthwhile looking at. Let's take a look at this thing right here. This is actually from my syllabus. I'll show you the syllabus in a little while. This does something very sophisticated with LaTeX that most people are not even aware it can do. My syllabi use the same standard template, and all of these attributes right here are going to be put into the syllabus based on these database entries right here. So if I change my syllabus, all I have to do is change these things right there. These are all the URLs that are automatically pulled. These are standard boilerplate templates. They're going to be put into the document automatically. And this is my course description, prerequisite Math 2203, matrices. I'm not sure you can see this from this distance, but you notice even right here, the title of this document is going to be course, backslash course name, syllabus. Course is defined up there, course name is defined down there. Everywhere I talk about my course in my syllabus, I only talk about backslash course. I don't talk about the course, in this case linear algebra, anywhere in the document. So it gives you that flexibility. Let me show you what, when you process this document, what it looks like. If I can find it, Math 3311. I'm looking for Math 3311 other than the one that's colored there. There it is, right there. There. That's what the document looks like. Had none of those positioning attributes or anything like that because the style file contained all the information that for my standard syllabus template, I'll have this cast there, that cast there, this cast in this size, in that color, and everything else going like that. You notice prerequisites, Math 2203, etc. And of course, required text, all of these were, and the Math 3311 was the backslash course name. So all of these things were attributes pulled in automatically. So whenever we do a syllabus, I just have to change my database. All the other stuff, okay, the course goals will change with each course, but by golly, if you notice for most syllabi, my grading is essentially the same. That's going to be the same. Everything's going to be the same. The actual course, the assignments will change, but all the other boilerplate, adding and dropping a class, attendance, policy, all those things come from those URLs defined at the front. So if they should ever change, all I have to do is change it in one place, in one document, and all the other ones pull from that document, and all my syllabi are then automatically updated. I don't have to go into 27 files and change things each time, trying to find where it was that I changed something, or what it was that I had done 2 years ago or a year ago, and try to remember what I had done. I think it makes your life so much simpler. It's got a steep learning curve, though. You don't get this for free. But like everything else that you do, 99% of what you want to do, 99% of what you want to do can be done with about 10% of the commands, 10% of the knowledge base that you really need. The other 1%, the really, really fancy stuff that I'm doing, you will have to struggle for. It took me, I've been doing this for, let's see, 26 years. So I think I'm good at it. But on the other hand, you get to piggyback off my goodness. Because I'm good at it, and because I'm a true believer in open source and shareware and all that, anything you want, let me know. I'll let you have it. Play with it. Make it work. If you have a question, I'll be happy to help you try to make it work. So the whole idea is to build a community of users that really wants to do things the way they want to do things. And in fact, that's really what it's about. It's about having the ability to do things the way you want them done. Let me take a look at this. Okay, let me pick up another file. It's not quite what I wanted right there. Here it is. UNH letterhead paper. No, it's my own LaTeX document that automatically puts the letterhead on top, puts all the information. Oh, and by the way, my signature is actually a JPEG image that's automatically put in. And actually, this is running through a bash script on a Linux box. So in order to get the thing to work the way it does, you'd have to run it on a machine that would allow you to sort of run the script that way. But you could still do this without the sort of Linux attributes that you would be using. But what's nice about this signature right here is that when I create my digital signature and put it into the document, I also create a paper trace, or an electronic trace, I should say, of that signature. Embedded in that JPEG image is some microcode associated with when that document was created. So if anyone ever decides to take that signature, it's just a JPEG image, pull it out, pull it off, and put it into one of their documents and forge my signature, I'll just say, show me the document and show me what the internal JPEG image file reveals about when this document was created and what the microcode says. If it doesn't match the one that was used to originally create my document, it's a forgery. And in fact, using public key encryption, I can actually allow the other person to decide whether in fact it's a forgery or not. So for all those reasons, It makes it very easy to use. And there's other ways of doing this, but and I don't want to wax effusive about that, but it's pretty slick. If I come back to this thing right here, this was the document that created that LaTeX letter. Everything in blue with a percent sign is a comment. So really all I'm doing is beginning a letter. That's going to be the style file. This is letter format. This is the data that tells me the person who it is who's writing the letter. First name, last name, city, street. I can fill in someone's address right there when I'm doing the document. I have the signature there because sometimes I want to change that. I'm going to use this size font for this Times font, 11.8 points, 16 point spacing. And this is the sort of thing that begins the document down there. And I don't think I can scroll all the way down, but there's not much more beyond that. And then there's the file that actually contains the little bit of the letter. And that's it. And then, of course, there's an end letter, an end document, which is needed on all LaTeX documents. When you're looking at something like that, it kind of scares you. It's like, oh my gosh, I'll never be able to do this. Pick up a style file, pick up a document processor, install LaTeX on your machine, and give it a try. Incidentally, if you are installing LaTeX on your machine, if you don't have it on your Windows or Macintosh or whatever, I would recommend probably going with TextLive at this point. It's probably the most generic, vanilla-flavored version of text that runs out there, TextLive, T-E-X-L-I-V-E. TextLive is also an attempt to unify text for Unix, Windows, and Macintosh environments. So the TextLive environment you get is, if not machine independent, is as close as you can get in today's world to machine independence. There are other versions and other distributions of text that you can run, ZE text, you name it. There's some really slick ones out there, but this is a good vanilla flavored package to go with and install. If you're running a Linux distribution like Ubuntu or Red Hat or any one of those, it already comes pre-installed. That's when you install it, it's already on the machine simply because it's always formed the core of the standard installation software base. Let me see one last thing right here. I think I had one last thing right here. Or did I? Nope, I may have had them all. All present C. Oh, here it is. The resolution of this screen is not good enough to display these lines. There's a little bit of rasterization going on right here. But essentially, and it's hard to see the light yellow and white and light yellow and white. But what you have here is actually the math department schedule, teaching schedule that I actually produce in LaTeX as well. This is built from a database. This is a little bit more sophisticated, but the database builds the file and then ultimately it's cast as a LaTeX file when it's output. So what I'm trying to show you is there is nothing you can't do with this package to produce a nice, that looks pretty lousy up there on the board right there, but to produce a nice document ultimately. I've got a couple minutes before I think the clock runs out on me. Does anyone have any questions or, are you wondering about LaTeX in any way, shape, or form? If you're a student, I would hardly recommend that you start looking at it in terms of a thesis or dissertation, if that's what you have, or even a paper for a project. It really makes it much easier.
Yeah, I can't do figure in LaTeX. I have to do it somewhere else and bring it there.
Well, the figure, okay, you did bring up a good point. LaTeX will not allow you to create a figure. What it allows you to do is to import a figure that's been created by another package. So for example, MATLAB will create a figure, or Mathematical will create a figure, and you'll have to import it. Now, one of the things I remember I used to do this lecture every year for the new incoming grad students. They would start using MATLAB, they start writing articles, etc. There's various other plot packages they would use. Students are not aware that there are really two types of graphics formats out there. Raster and vector. Most people talk about, oh, it's a JPEG image, oh, it's a PDF. Essentially, they're all the same. A raster image is made up of pixels. A vector image is made up of commands that say, draw me this line from this point to this point, draw me that line from this point to this point. And so a vector graphics image, if you make it 10 times bigger, will maintain fidelity. Your lines will still be sharp. You're not going to get staircasing. A raster image is going to get all staircased all over the planet if you blow it up enough. Or if you shrink it, you'll have lines falling out because they get too thin, and you get rasterization problems and aliasing problems and all those other issues. If you're creating a quality, publication quality document, and you're using line drawings like 2D figures, you know, the graph of something X versus Y, always create the file as a vector graphic. You typically have a choice in MATLAB as to whether you're going to output a PDF that's a vector graphic or whether you're going to output a JPEG. Now, if you have a 3D surface plot, there is no way that that's going to be anything other than a raster graphic image. But then when you go to import that into LaTeX, because you can scale your image in LaTeX, you can, of course, take that vector graphic and move it around and change its shape and size, and it will still look good. Having said that, one of the biggest mistakes students make is they go for quality. So they create all their images, they create these 5 megabyte images of these line drawings, and there's 27 in chapter 1, and there's 35 in chapter 2, and they use the original size image even though they're only appearing as postage stamps. And they never scale the image down to the size they need, so that now they have this 300 megabyte document. And so you've got to be aware of what you're doing. In terms of size, if you download a Microsoft Word file, you're going to have at least a couple megabytes, even if it's just plain text, it seems, with a little bit in there. A PDF file created by LaTeX is typically a couple of 10 to a couple of hundred kilobytes. It's very efficient means for transmitting very nicely formatted information, and it travels well across the internet, incidentally. Are there any questions?
How available is this product? I mean, can I just...
Free. It's free. It's free. You can download it. Go to, what do you call it, put in Text Live, whatever your machine is, Text Live Mac, Text Live, whatever version. Huh?
Tech.
Oh, yeah, that's okay. I'm glad you mentioned that. Associated with Text Live, you will also have to have what's called, if you're like most people using a GUI or are used to using a graphical user interface, some sort of program. MikTeX is one of them that is free also in the Windows environment. As I said, I run Text Live, but I run it through the VI editor, running it in a native command environment through the shell. It's fun. It makes it so much easier to do all the things you need to do, but MikTeX with Text Live should work. Just put that into Google somewhere and you'll get taken to some website where you can download it.
And I have another question.
Sure.
You mentioned that this product is mainly used for math, right?
It's mainly used for math, believe it or not, but it's got enormous utility beyond that. That's why I'm here.
So my question is, do most people that have this program use it for mathematical
Yeah.
portions?
Yeah, because here's the reason why. You can do a reasonable job of typesetting plain old English with just about anything. Typesetting math with just about anything makes it, like I said, looks like a ransom note from the 1930s. $5,000 now, or Butch dies. You know, like it's cut and pasted into the document. Mathematics has very special requirements. If you think about it that way, any photo typesetting tool, any document processor that can handle the extremely sort of difficult demands that mathematical photo typesetting requires really will do a phenomenal job on plain old English text. Now, that also means you don't have to use all the really complicated attributes that you need to for typesetting math. You don't have to remember, I need to be in math mode or not in math mode. I have to put a dollar sign or not a dollar sign, begin equation, end equation, etc. So it makes it very easy. I would highly recommend it for an English thesis, a history thesis, because all those, the cross-referencing, the bibliography, all that stuff is done automatically. You process the document, it's all included, it's all there. You don't have to work. If your advisor says, I don't like the way this chapter is reading, take these 3 sections and move it over to the other chapter. What would you do? You typically renumber everything, and no, it automatically gets done. Now, even in Microsoft Word, you can create a template that will allow you to to do it, but it's a little bit more challenging, I think. Oh, maybe not if you're used to it, but I still think it does it much better in LaTeX. It's really robust. Any other questions?
You talked a little bit about layering in here. Is it similar to like Photoshop that you have the different layers?
In essence, you can create image overlays. What you're doing in some of those images, I've put one image on top of another image, on top of another image, on top of another image, and then moved it around and manipulated it. And so you can get fairly, I think, slick-looking results without too much difficulty. Tech allows you to rotate images. It allows you to actually stretch images, move them around in all sorts of weird shapes and forms. It's not as robust as an image handling program like ImageMagick. One of the things that you may also want to look at, I know in the Unix environment you have a package called PDF crop. PDF crop is a wonderful tool. I'm sure there's something like that that exists in the Windows world or the Mac world as well. If you create a image, let's say in MATLAB, typically it puts on your 8.5 by 11 white sheet of paper that graphic that you're really interested in. Now you go to import that image into LaTeX and all of a sudden you find, oh my goodness, all this white covers all my text because I've got this 8.5 by 11 page of paper and I only got a 2 by 2 graphic and it just doesn't go on it. There's a wonderful little utility in the Unix world called PDF crop. You give it an image, just say PDF crop this image, it takes the image, takes all the pixels that are white around the image down to the last pixel and makes the smallest rectangle that will contain the image, and that gives it back to you as the cropped image. And you can import that without having to worry about overlays with too much white or something like that, or wiping out text. So you do need some things like that to make things work a little bit better. But yeah, you can do an enormous amount with images.
And at the university that you came from,
Yeah, University of Southern Mississippi. Yeah.
Did they use this to have their students do their dissertations?
It was required for any student doing a scientific computing dissertation that was PhD or master's. It was required for any master's department of mathematics thesis. It was required by the Department of Physics for their theses and dissertations. And I think computer science made it optional, but about half the students used it, but half didn't, depending on what they were doing.
So, I mean, the University of New Haven is moving towards having more master's degrees, theses, and, you know, in forensic science and, you know, all the so have you talked to, like, the graduate council?
No,
Isn't
no.
there, like, a faculty graduate council?
Yeah, I'm not even aware of that. Math doesn't have a graduate program. I'm trying to get one, incidentally, if you're interested in pursuing that discussion afterwards. I'm trying to get one going for a master's in mathematics, but even if you don't have a master's program, our students doing honors theses in the department were doing it in LaTeX. There's two reasons why I wanted the students to do it at the undergraduate level in LaTeX, in math. Because if they went to graduate school anywhere, they will be using it and they might as well learn how to use it then and there. So I had a student on an REU and she came there for, I think it was 8 weeks or 9 weeks, I can't remember. And I sat her down on a Linux machine running, at that time, Red Hat. I said, okay, here's your desktop, here's the VI editor, here's the instructions for running VI editor. I showed her about 6 or 7 commands that basically run the VI editor. I showed her how to run PDF LaTeX, how to do it in the shell. And I said, okay, you're going to be writing all your documents using this format. After a week, she was doing it with no problems. She was producing documents. She was actually typesetting in command mode using the markup language, begin document, end document, begin environment, end environment, / command, typing everything longhand, no GUI, nothing, with the VI editor after 1 week. So if a grad student can do that, I think most people can pick up. Because remember what I said, 90% of what you need is really, you only need 10 or 12 commands to do. It's amazing. There's that wonderful rule that 90% of what you want in life can be done with a handful of commands.
Because you need more. I mean,
You need more, but that...
it kills you. I mean, I have spent an hour to fix a matrix because rows go into each other. I wanted
Yeah.
to be...
But again, if you're using the standard LaTeX environment for typesetting arrays, it's a rather obsolete environment. I would use the AMS LaTeX array environment, and there you don't have to worry about the counting of the columns. So it does work a little bit better. It is more challenging than it would be otherwise. Even there, to address that issue, when I have a very complex table to set up, there's a wonderful tool, again, shareware, called LaTeX. LaTeX is a way of writing text without, it's what you see is what you get environment for writing LaTeX. I think that's available on several platforms as well, LYX, LaTeX. I don't like to use it to write my documents because it ends up imprinting its own style on the document. But what I do is like a table. I say, okay, let's create a table, and it creates the little boxes. I want it to be 7 by 5, and I want it to have a subtable of this size, and then I just fill it in with A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, P, export that as a text file, and then put that in, cut and paste that into my LaTeX document, and just fill it in, and then it's done perfectly. So yes, there are little tricks. There are ways of making things work so that it always works most of the time. As I said, I've been doing this for 25, 27 years, so I definitely have a bag full of tricks. And you will have, as I said, it does have a steeper learning curve, but it does produce a much better result than you would be able to get otherwise. And I don't think there's anything out there, at least not something that's going to cost you at least a few tens of thousands of dollars, that does true proportional spacing in a multi-column environment. There's just nothing out there. In fact, it's been a number of years. FrameMaker and Interleaf, are those still around? Those two standard sort of photo typesetting tools. They used to be used by the big publishing houses. They were like $100,000 a license or $50,000 a license. For doing math, they actually used LaTeX. It was embedded into the software because it was free. So, any questions? Oh, one more?
Yeah. I've been giving all my exams, quizzes in...
LaTeX?
No, that's still too complicated.
I got a style file for you that you're gonna love.
How do I transfer those to LaTeX form?
Yes, I do all my quizzes and exams in LaTeX.
No, mine is not.
Okay. How do you
move them, and from now on, they get distorted.
It's difficult to change from, let's say, Microsoft Word to LaTeX. There's just no good way to convert the math. Text is easy. Text I can convert really easily. In fact, if you give me a doc file and I can convert that to plain old ASCII text and then import the ASCII text into my LaTeX document, and then 99% of the conversion is already done. Math, unfortunately, in particular on Microsoft Word, is done using a proprietary font set, using a proprietary software package. In fact, how many of you have used OpenOffice instead of Microsoft Word? It's the shareware version of OpenOffice, of Microsoft Word. It actually runs better than Microsoft Word, with one caveat. Mathematics done in OpenOffice is different than mathematics done in Microsoft Word, because Microsoft will not release the instruction set for how they do it, and they have it copyrighted, and you can't touch it. So math will not go. OpenOffice. OpenOffice. And that's a nice product. So there's a tremendous amount of shareware out there that really just does a tremendous job. And the nice thing about shareware is if there's a bug in it, usually you can either fix it yourself or look on the web to see who's fixed it, instead of waiting for the new release that's going to cost you money and then they broke something else and it doesn't work. I used to use, my first experience on using small computers, I come from an environment of massive mainframes going back to the days of Lawrence Livermore and big labs and all of that, right? And my first experience in using a small computer was using a DEC. Digital Equipment had some nice computers. And so when I got my position at the University of Southern Mississippi and I had some startup money, I purchased a DEC Alpha, which was one of the fastest, most wonderful machines. It was a RISC machine. I don't know if you remember what RISC machines were back in the early 1990s. They were beating the socks off anything else that was a microcomputer out there. And I got one for $10,000. And it worked really great for 2 years. And then my software license ran out. I could still run all the software. My Fortran compiler, all my compilers still worked, but I couldn't get any updates. And if I wanted to do it, I'd have to pay another $1,000 a year. My budget didn't quite afford that. I was wondering what I was going to do with this machine. A student says, hey, you know you can run Linux on that. I said, show me how. I never turned back. I've been running Linux ever since. That was 1995. In fact, I used to have my first computer in my house actually was a dual boot machine, Windows and Linux. I wanted to play with Linux a little bit. And I bought this Pentium one that was, at that time it cost like $2,500. I'm still shocked that I paid that much money for a computer. And it had like, I think it was 1 gigabyte of storage. I actually bought 1 gigabyte, which cost me, I think, the $1,000 right there. That's how much a gigabyte of storage cost back then. And I was going to install a new version of Linux on it. This was that time Slackware, and it wouldn't fit. The Windows partition was there. It was half the disk. And I called down to my wife. I said, hey, you use Windows 3.1 a lot? She goes, no. I hosed it. I never looked back. I have never touched Windows since, and I don't regret it. So anyway, I appreciate the opportunity to have chewed your ears off for over an hour. I usually like to end things on time, but I guess I didn't.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.